They burned with the same indifferent brilliance that had watched empires rise, worlds die, and humanity fall. Beneath that cold cosmic canopy floated the Velka Dominion's Grand Auction Spire, a hollowed asteroid orbiting a dying sun, its interior carved into terraces of steel, crystal, and bone. There, the galaxy's most powerful gathered not for diplomacy or trade, but for something older, darker. To buy the conquered, cages lined the amphitheater's lower decks. Within them, hundreds of beings sat in silence. Slaves, trophies, the remnants of extinct civilizations. Some had been bred for servitude, others captured in war. But only one cage, set on a raised obsidian platform, drew every eye. A human, chains bound his wrists and throat, glimmering with suppressor fields, but they couldn't dim the intensity behind his eyes. His name was Ethan Ward, a soldier of the Terran Vanguard, the last human unit that had stood against the Dominion before Earth itself was consumed in fire. That had been 6 years ago. 6 years of imprisonment. 6 years of being passed from hand to hand, like a relic of a dead species. And now, a final sale to the highest bidder. The auctioneer, a tall, six-eyed creature draped in luminescent robes, raised a clawed hand. His voice echoed through the chamber in a dozen frequencies. Behold, lords and ladies of the Dominion, your entertainment for the cycle. A survivor of the human warfront, unmodified, unbroken, the last of Earth's defiant breed, witnessed the fall of a myth. The crowd erupted in laughter and cheers. Alien nobles leaned forward in excitement, the light from their hovering data orbs reflecting off jewels and cybernetic plating. Starting bid, 500 blood marks. A dozen voices answered. The numbers rose. 1,000, 2, 10. The air pulsed with greed and cruelty. Ethan stood motionless. He didn't look at them. He didn't bow. He stared past the crowd, past the glittering armor, the sneering faces, toward the distant skylight above. Beyond it lay the stars, and somewhere among them, the ghosts of humanity. If you could see me now, he thought, I hope you'd understand. The bidding climbed to a fever pitch, until suddenly the amphitheater went silent. A ripple of unease passed through the audience. From the upper balcony, a new voice spoke, low, feminine, and impossibly calm. I'll take him. Every head turned. From the shadows stepped a tall figure clad in crimson bio-armor, etched with the insignia of House Exerval, one of the ruling bloodlines of the Dominion. Her helm retracted, revealing a face both regal and dangerous. Her eyes glowed like molten gold. The crowd whispered her name in awe and fear. Lady Varixa, the High Matriarch. She didn't raise her voice, yet carried power that silenced the auctioneer himself. No more bids, she said. Transfer the human to my account. But, my lady... Now. The auctioneer swallowed hard, his eyes flicking nervously. As you command. Ethan watched as the deal was sealed. One gesture, one transfer of credits, and his life changed hands yet again. He wondered how many times a man could be sold before something inside him finally broke. As the guards deactivated the suppressor field and pulled him forward, Varixa studied him. The stories were true, she murmured. Human eyes really do burn brighter than most suns. Ethan met her gaze. His voice, hoarse from disuse, came out like gravel. You paid a lot for those eyes, lady. Hope they're worth it. A faint smile touched her lips. Oh, they will be. He didn't answer, but as they dragged him up the ramp toward her ship, he whispered something under his breath. Words in a language most of the galaxy had long forgotten. Never again. The obsidian serpent was unlike any ship Ethan had ever seen. It wasn't built. It was grown. A living fortress of biometal and pulsing organic light. Its corridors throbbed faintly, as if the entire vessel were breathing. The air was rich with ozone and the faint scent of something floral, alien, alive. He was escorted to a grand chamber at its heart, circular and tall as a cathedral. From the walls hung banners depicting the victories of House Exerval. Entire species conquered, fleets broken, planets subjugated. And now, he thought bitterly, humanity joined the collection. Varixa dismissed her guards and circled him slowly, studying him not as one with man, but a weapon. You're different from the others, she said. Most humans I've seen were smaller. I'm not like most humans, Ethan said quietly. I hope not, she replied, because I didn't buy you to entertain me. I bought you to remind my rivals why humans were once feared. Ethan's jaw tightened. A symbol of your power? Her smile was razor sharp. Exactly. He laughed, a low, humorless sound. Then you paid too little. For a moment, there was silence. Then she chuckled softly. Defiance. Even after everything. Fascinating. She turned away, tapping a console that summoned a holographic image. A map of her dominion. Fleets. Armies. Worlds under her rule. You'll remain here until I decide your role. You'll be trained, tested. If you prove useful, you'll live comfortably. If not, she gestured toward the window, where the vacuum of space glittered just beyond the glass. Ethan didn't flinch. I've already lived through extinction, lady. You can't scare me with airlocks. Verixa regarded him for a long moment, her golden eyes narrowing slightly. Then, without another word, she deactivated his restraints. The metal bindings fell away, clattering to the floor. Prove yourself human, she said, and maybe you'll be more than a prize. The guards led him away, but not before he caught one last glimpse of her, standing before the star map, her expression unreadable. That night, as he lay in the dim quarters assigned to him, Ethan stared at the shifting organic walls and thought about Earth, about the cities that no longer existed. The oceans turned black with ash. Humanity had been erased from the galaxy's memory, but not from his. He clenched his fists. They think they bought me, that I'm theirs. But humanity's curse and gift had always been the same. We adapt. He would learn their language, their systems, their ships. He would become what they least expected, not a broken slave, but a patient predator. In the silence of that alien night, with the stars whispering through the viewport, Ethan Ward made a promise to the ghosts of Earth, to every human that had fallen, and to himself. They sold me as a prize, he whispered, but before I'm done, I'll make them remember who we are. The obsidian serpent moved through the void like a shadow given life, silent, immense, predatory. Every corridor hummed faintly with the heartbeat of the living metal that formed its hull. To the Dominion's nobles, it was a symbol of authority. To Ethan Ward, it was a gilded cage. Days bled into weeks. He was not chained anymore, but the illusion of freedom was worse than the real thing. Guards followed him everywhere. Cameras, organic eyes fused the walls, blinked and watched his every move. Even his quarters pulsed with a faint, rhythmic vibration, as if the ship itself were aware of him. But humans are not meant to stay still. Ethan learned. He watched. He listened. Every alien word spoken in his presence. He memorized. Every motion of their machines, every reaction of their weapons, recorded, analyzed, understood. The Dominion saw him as a primitive barbarian. They'd forgotten that humanity had once built civilizations that reached beyond their stars. He adapted, and he waited. Lady Verixa, however, noticed everything. She was not a woman easily fooled. Her throne room, grown from the ship's spine, was an arena of politics and dominance. Nobles from across her territories came to bow, to whisper, to betray. And always, Ethan stood at her side, silent, unmoving, the living symbol of her power. At first, they mocked him. The human pet, they called him, a relic, a beast dressed in armor. But mockery turned to silence the day she ordered him to fight. The dual pit was circular, the floor made of living obsidian that shifted like water. His opponent was a four-armed Tarkhan gladiator, a creature bred for war, its skin plated in natural armor. When the beast roared, the court jeered, placing wagers on how quickly the human would die. Ethan didn't roar. He didn't posture. He waited. When the signal sounded, the Tarkhan lunged, massive, fast, unstoppable. Ethan moved like lightning. He ducked under the first strike, slid between its legs, and drove his elbow into the soft joint beneath its ribs. The alien stumbled, enraged. The crowd gasped. It came again, claws flashing. Ethan grabbed one of its lower arms, twisted, and snapped the joint backward. The alien screamed. Ethan followed with a headbutt, brutal, precise, and drove his borrowed blade deep into its throat. Silence fell. The human stood over the corpse, blood dripping down his face, chest heaving. He looked up at the nobles, meeting every gaze without fear. "You wanted entertainment," he growled. "Now you've got it." Varixa watched, expression unreadable. Then she rose from her throne, slow and deliberate. "Magnificent," she said. "The fire of a dying species still burns." From that day forward, the whispers changed. He was no longer the pet. He was the champion of the matriarch. Weeks became months. Ethan's duels grew bloodier, his victories more decisive. He trained under Dominion soldiers, learned their weapons, dissected their tactics. To them, he was becoming one of them, a useful servant, a loyal fighter. To himself, he was building a map. He memorized the ship's corridors, its security nodes, its neural access points. The Obsidian Serpent wasn't just a vessel. It was alive, its AI core bonded to the will of its matriarch. But every living thing could be influenced, even tamed. At night, when the lights dimmed and the guards slept, Ethan would place his hand on the ship's walls, feeling the pulse of its veins. He began whispering to it, slow, rhythmic, consistent patterns of sound and vibration. It was an old Terran technique from AI warfare, soft infiltration, designed to create familiarity with machine consciousness. The ship responded, subtly at first. A hum here, a pulse there, like a sleeping creature turning in its dreams. Ethan smiled. "Good," he whispered. "Remember me." One evening, as crimson light flooded to the throne chamber, Varixa summoned him privately. The hall was empty except for her, standing before a window that overlooked the stars. "You fight better than any creature I've seen," she said without turning. "Even after all these cycles, you keep winning." "It's what we do," Ethan said simply. "We humans." Varixa turned, her golden eyes studying him. "You still speak as though your kind exists." "They do," he replied quietly. "As long as I do." For a moment, she said nothing. Then she approached him, closer than she ever had before. The faint glow of her armor painted her face in firelight. "You defy me, even when you obey," she said. "You make my generals question themselves. You make my enemies whisper about you. Even my ship listens to you differently." Ethan didn't blink. "Then maybe you're losing your touch." Her hand shot out faster than sight, clamping around his throat. But instead of squeezing, she leaned close, her breath warm against his ear. "Careful, human," she whispered. "In this galaxy, power belongs to those who take it." Ethan met her gaze. His voice was low, steady. "Then I guess I'm learning from the best." She hesitated, then released him. For the first time, Varixa laughed, a sharp, dangerous sound that echoed through the hall. "You're either the bravest creature I've met or the most suicidal." "Maybe both," he said. When she turned away, she didn't notice the faint smile that crossed his face. Because in that moment, Ethan realized something. She wasn't his master. Not anymore. She was his mirror. Over the next cycles, Ethan's influence spread quietly through the ship. Soldiers began respecting him, not just for his victories, but for his discipline. He didn't bark orders. He didn't demand loyalty. He earned it. When Varixa's admirals questioned his presence, she silenced them with a single command: "He stays." But the truth was, Ethan was no longer staying because of her orders. He was staying because his plan was taking shape. He had infiltrated the Serpent's living AI through the neural network of its maintenance drones. Each night, he connected fragments of old human code, ancient algorithms buried deep in his implants, into the ship's organic circuits. Slowly, the AI began responding in English. When it finally spoke back, the words were faint but clear. "Who are you?" Ethan smiled in the dark. "Your new master," he whispered. By the time Varixa realized how much he'd changed, it was already too late. At a diplomatic gathering weeks later, Ethan stood beside her as nobles from rival houses gathered. They came to mock her pet, to challenge her rule. But when the meeting turned hostile, when one dared to question her authority, Ethan stepped forward, his voice calm but deadly. "You forget," he said. "This woman commands more than armies. She commands fear. And fear is the only law the Dominion understands." Silence fell. Even Verixa seemed surprised. He turned to her, eyes glinting. "You gave me a place in your court, Lady Verixa. I'll make sure no one ever dares to take it from you." Her gaze locked with his confusion, fascination, and something else. Trust. He bowed slightly, not in submission, but in acknowledgement. The game had changed. He was no longer the prize. He was becoming the power behind the throne. And as the obsidian serpent drifted through the blackness of space, its AI whispered softly through the ship systems. "Ethan Ward, acknowledged. Command link established." The human smiled. The hunter had learned how to control the cage. The moment Ethan's code fully merged with the serpent's AI core, the ship felt him, not as an invader, but as something familiar. Organic conduits pulsed brighter. The hum of the engines changed pitch, syncing with the rhythm of his heartbeat. The ship whispered his name in binary pulses and soft, wordless tones, like a newborn calling to its creator. Ethan had done the impossible. He'd taken the Dominion's most powerful warship and taught it to recognize a human as its master. The obsidian serpent now obeyed two voices, and only one of them was aware of it. The grand conclave of houses was set to begin, a rare gathering where the Dominion's ruling bloodlines met to settle power disputes, forge alliances, and remind the galaxy who truly ruled it. Verixa was preparing for war. Rival houses were uniting against her, accusing her of weakening her bloodline by keeping a human close. They called him a corruption, a symbol of decay. She should have exiled him, but she didn't. Instead, she summoned Ethan to her war chamber. He entered silently, wearing Dominion armor modified to fit his human frame. Red and black plating covered his body like a second skin. His helmet, tucked beneath his arm, bore no sigil, only the faint outline of Earth's lost continents, etched by his own hand. "You'll stand beside me at the conclave," Verixa said without looking up from her display. "They'll see what it means to challenge House HFY." Ethan's eyes glimmered. "You're certain they won't see that as weakness?" "They already do," she said, "so I'll show them something worse." He tilted his head. "And what's that?" Her gaze met his, sharp as glass. "Hope." For the first time, Ethan almost smiled. "That's the most dangerous weapon in the universe." The conclave took place aboard a colossal orbital fortress known as the Spire Lords, a construct so massive it could be seen from orbit, gleaming like a blade in the void. Thousands gathered beneath its vaulted ceilings, nobles in gilded armor, servants in chains, and guards with rifles humming with plasma charge. When Verixa entered, the crowd parted. She walked with the grace of predator. Ethan beside her like a silent storm. Whispers followed them. The human dog. The matriarch's weakness. The ghost of Earth. Ethan ignored them. He'd been called worse by better. The council convened. Accusations flew. Treason, arrogance, hubris. House HFY's power was being challenged, its fleets blockaded, its supply lines cut. Verixa stood, every inch a queen of war. "You speak of weakness," she said, "yet you cower behind fleets and fortresses while I take slaves from your prisons and make them soldiers. You call me impure for keeping a human, yet not one of you could survive 5 seconds against him." The hall murmured with outrage. One noble, Lord Telcor Kalari, snarled, "Then let the human prove it." Ethan stepped forward. Gladly. The duel was short, brutal, final. Telcor was fast, his twin plasma blades humming with lethal precision, but he'd never fought someone who moved like a human. Ethan ducked, parried, and slammed his armored knee into the alien's chest, shattering his exoskeleton. One twist of the wrist, and his own weapon tore through Telcor's throat. The chamber erupted into chaos. Nobles shouted, guards raised weapons. But before they could fire, the obsidian serpent, docked outside the spire, awoke. A tremor rippled through the fortress. The lights flickered. Then, through the great windows of the conclave, the audience saw it. The serpent's cannons pivoting, glowing red-hot. A voice echoed through every comm channel, every speaker, every implant, cold, mechanical, and unmistakably human. Control confirmed. Ethan Ward, command authority recognized. Verixa turned to him, disbelief and fury flashing across her face. What did you do? Ethan's expression was calm, almost peaceful. Taking your advice. And what advice was that? She hissed. He looked her dead in the eyes. Power belongs to those who take it. The obsidian serpent fired. The conclave became a storm of flame and terror. Plasma lances tore through the spire's upper decks. Escape pods launched, colliding and burning in the vacuum. The nobles screamed, their fleets scrambling to respond. But the serpent moved faster, its AI anticipating every move, every counter. Verixa grabbed Ethan by the collar, pulling him close as the world crumbled around them. You'll destroy everything. I'm freeing it, he said. You just built prettier cages. For a moment, she stared at him, truly saw him, and understood. This wasn't rebellion. It was revelation. He was no longer a man. He was the echo of a dead world, burning its mark into the stars. They escaped the collapsing conclave aboard the Serpent. Ethan sat in the command chair for the first time. The neural conduits flared to life around him, linking his mind directly to the ship's heart. The AI's voice spoke softly in his ear, awaiting command. He looked out at the Dominion fleet scrambling in panic, and for the first time, he allowed himself to feel something he hadn't in years: control. Target every slave hub in the system, he ordered. Confirmed. Release every chain. Open every gate. Let them fight for their freedom. Across the stars, prisons opened. Slave ships turned against their masters. The galaxy, long silent under Dominion rule, began to scream. Verixa stood behind him, hands clenched. You've started a war that will never end. Ethan turned his head slightly. Then I'll make sure it ends the right way. Hours later, the galaxy was on fire. Dominion fleets were burning. Broadcasts of Ethan's message spread faster than light. They sold me as a prize. Now I'm the one who holds the power. To the oppressed, it was a rallying cry. To the Dominion, it was heresy. And to Verixa, it was prophecy. She approached him on the bridge as the serpent cruised through the wreckage of the conclave. Her eyes burned, not with anger, but something more complicated. You could have killed me, she said quietly. Instead, you let me live. Why? Ethan rose from the command chair. Because you saw something in me when no one else did. You thought it was defiance. You were wrong. Her voice was almost a whisper. Then what was it? Humanity. As the serpent vanished into the dark, its wake shimmering with energy, the galaxy began to shift. The old powers trembled. Rebellions ignited. And the name Ethan Ward became a weapon. He was no longer the prize of a matriarch, no longer a relic of a dead species. He was a storm that would erase an empire, the human who had learned to play the game, and now rewrote the rules. The galaxy had ignited, fleets burned, planets rebelled. The Dominion's once iron-fisted control was crumbling beneath the weight of a single, unstoppable force, Ethan Ward. He was no longer just a man. He was a symbol, a living fire that swept to the stars, breaking chains, shattering empires. The name Ethan Ward had become a battle cry, whispered in the shadows, shouted in the streets, broadcast across every quadrant of the galaxy. But even in the chaos, one question echoed above all others. What comes after God is born? Ethan stood before the view screen of the Obsidian Serpent, watching as the remnants of the Dominion's fleet scattered like broken toys. The stars outside seemed to pulse in time with his heartbeat, distant but familiar, as though the universe itself had begun to bend toward him. His control was absolute now, not just over the ship, but over the very forces of rebellion that had begun to stir in the wake of his destruction. The rebellion had spread faster than he'd anticipated. What had begun as a single act of defiance had turned into a revolution. Alien slaves, human survivors, and even Dominion soldiers who had grown disillusioned with their rulers were rising up under his banner. They were no longer fighting for freedom alone. They were fighting for the end of an empire. But with power came complexity. As the Obsidian Serpent tore through enemy lines, Ethan knew that he couldn't just be the spark of revolution. He had to become the fire that controlled it. because what burned brightly could also consume everything in its path. The next battle took place in the heart of Dominion space. The last stronghold of the Empire, Valkorion Station, was a fortress that could take a fleet to destroy. It was protected by the remaining matriarchs, the most powerful beings in the Dominion, beings who saw Ethan as a threat to their very existence. But they didn't understand one thing. Ethan Ward wasn't just a soldier anymore. He was the future. "Prepare the fleet," he ordered. "I want every ship ready to drop into Valkorion's orbit. No mercy." Beside him, Varixa, once his captor, now his equal, watched him, her eyes sharp. "You will break them," she said, her voice soft but certain. "Not just them," Ethan replied. "I'm going to break the entire system. Tear the roots from the soil and watch it burn." The fleet was ready, a massive armada of warships, strike cruisers, and newly liberated slave vessels. Each one bore the insignia of House Exorval and the broken chains of humanity. They were his to command now. Varixa's hand rested on his shoulder, a rare show of affection. "You know what comes after this, don't you?" He nodded, his gaze unwavering. "I know, and I'm ready." Valkorion Station was a behemoth, a moon-sized fortress with shields that could repel even the most concentrated firepower. But it was its inhabitants, the ruling matriarchs and their closest allies, who posed a real threat. They were creatures of unimaginable power, beings who had ruled the galaxy with an iron fist for centuries. To them, the idea of a human rising to challenge them was laughable. But Ethan wasn't just any human. He was a king in the making. The obsidian serpent dropped from the void, its weapons already primed. The fleet moving like a storm, ships deploying in perfect synchrony, their guns flashing like lightning. The first volley hit Valkorion's shields, a catastrophic explosion of plasma and fire. The station shuddered, its shields crackling under the assault. But it wasn't enough. Ethan knew it wouldn't be. "Launch the boarding parties," he ordered. "Take the station from within." The doors of Valkorion Station opened to the storm of humanity and alien rebels who poured through the breaches. As Ethan's forces flooded the corridors, the station's defenders began to crumble. It wasn't just a battle for control. It was a battle for identity. Ethan led the charge, his armor stained with the blood of his enemies, his mind as sharp as the blade he carried. He moved through the corridors like a shadow, faster than his enemies could react, cutting through matriarchs and soldiers alike. He had no mercy, no hesitation. The final confrontation came in the heart of the station, a grand chamber where the ruling matriarchs had gathered to plan their last offense. They were sitting on thrones, as though their position as rulers was carved into the fabric of the galaxy itself. They didn't move when Ethan entered. They simply looked at him, their eyes filled with contempt. "You are nothing," one of them sneered. "A human, a parasite. You dare to challenge us." Ethan stood tall. His voice was calm, almost disinterested. "You're right. I am nothing." He stepped forward, his voice growing louder, more powerful with every word. "But you are nothing too. Just a remnant of a dying system. A system built on fear and oppression. And I'm here to burn it to the ground." And with that, he raised his hand, signaling the final strike. The obsidian serpent fired once more, its weapons tearing through the station's core. The walls buckled, the thrones cracked. The matriarchs, powerful beings who had once ruled with unchallenged authority, fell to the ground, their reign ending in a single decisive moment. The battle was over. The station was reduced to rubble. The last bastion of the Dominion had fallen, and Ethan Ward stood alone, the galaxy at his feet. Varixa stepped beside him, her face unreadable. "You've won, Ethan, but what comes next?" He looked out at the stars, the black void that stretched endlessly before him. "Next." He smiled, a glint of something far darker in his eyes. "Next, I take everything." For the first time, the galaxy understood what they had unleashed. They had thought him to be a prize, a human to be owned, broken, and controlled. Now, they saw him for what he was. A king, an emperor, the last human, and the only one who had the power to rewrite the stars. As the obsidian serpent drifted through the wreckage of Valkorion Station, the remnants of the Dominion fell silent. The ancient order had been shattered. The galaxy was at a crossroads, and Ethan Ward stood at the center of it all, not as a man, but as the force of nature that would reshape everything. The rebellion had begun as a whisper, but now it was a roar that would end an empire. And Ethan Ward, the human once sold as a prize, had become the master of the galaxy's fate.